Uh, Dear President of the Bulgarian National Audit Office, dear Auditor General and President of Supreme Audit Institution, dear colleagues. It gives me great pleasure to address you on behalf of State Audit Institution of Montenegro and this high-level conference. Please allow me to express our gratitude to the Bulgarian National Audit Office for the hospitality. The efficiency of the overall public sector depends to a large extent on the quality of the cooperation between the Parliament, Government and Supreme Audit Institution, and only the common interest of all public institutions can provide the best results for the country. One of the key aspects of democracy is a system of balance between the various branches of government. Parliament, as legislative power, has a key role in every democracy because it expresses the will of the citizens and supervises the work of the government on behalf of the citizens. The principles of international standard ISA 12 state the governments and public sector entities need to be accountable for their stewardship over and use of public resources to ensure that elected officials act in the best interest of the citizens they represent. The Lima Declaration, as the Magna Carta of government auditing, highlights that the management of the public funds represents a trust and therefore the concept of and establishment of the credible, professional and independent Supreme Audit Institution is of the great importance. The Supreme Audit Institution can accomplish its tasks in objective and effective manner only if they are independent of the audited entity and protected against outside influence. The independence of Supreme Audit Institution implies a broad audit mandate and the full discretion in the discharge of the SAI function under unrestricted access to information, the right and obligation to report on its work, the freedom to decide the content, timing and publishing of audit reports, as well as effective follow-up mechanisms on Supreme Audit Institution recommendations. It also imposes an obligation to Supreme Audit Institution to make its work transparent and credible. That is not to question its impartiality, ethics and professionalism. The issue of independence of Supreme Audit Institution is closely linked to the Parliament due to partnership relation with regards to its institutional establishment and professional cooperation, as well as a provision of the funds for financing its activities. However, the independence of the Supreme Audit Institution may also be impaired by the need of the Parliament to influence its activity through the selection of audit entity and subject matter to the audit. Undoubtedly, the compromise are always sought that requires objectivity, impartiality and expertise. This is also an important issue in relation to the executive power. If the principles of objectivity and impartiality were impaired, this would imply a permanent violation of the authority of the Supreme Audit Institution and above all incorrect inputs for the executive power with the possible consequences related to the public interests. The freedom of the Supreme Audit Institution to decide on the mandate of its work is also an important issue. Expectation of the public and Parliament may often be more demanding in relation to the capacities and resources available to the Supreme Audit Institution. The Supreme Audit Institution should strictly consider the expectation of the Parliament and the public. This means that the expectation of the Parliament and the public represent obligation for the Supreme Audit Institution, but at the same time they are not binding. In that regard, it is the obligation of the Supreme Audit Institution to consider carefully the initiative and expectation of the Parliament, state the reasons for rejection and acceptance with the full autonomy of decision-making process. The initiative or request of the Parliament becomes binding when the Supreme Audit Institution accepts the initiative and carries out a concrete audit activity. The parliamentary initiative can also be legally supported, whereby the Supreme Audit Institution must perform its audit mandate based on the legal obligation. If this legal obligation relates to the basic nature of activities of a Supreme Audit Institution, such as audit of the final budget account, then the autonomy of its operation is not called into question. However, the risk for the autonomy of the work of Supreme Audit Institution may arise when a law requires the Supreme Audit Institution to adjust its audit work to specific requirements or topics. In addition to its autonomy, the legal obligation may impair efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of the work of Supreme Audit Institution. Namely, in this case, the Supreme Audit Institution subordinates its capacities to this legal obligation, and if the resources are limited, more comprehensive audits would be sacrificed that would possibly have better effects in improving the function of the public administration system. The conflict situation, in this sense, may be far greater in the period of economic recession or social crisis, because the country seeks to identify the cases of problems, as well as to make more efficient allocation of the public funds. In this situation, the Supreme Audit Institution may also be required to extend its audit mandate in the function of conducting more efficient fiscal policy or providing support for strengthening fiscal discipline. The question arises as to how to balance the work of the Supreme Audit Institution with objectively based demands of the Parliament going beyond the capacities and autonomy of decision-making process of the Supreme Audit Institution. To what extent the Supreme Audit Institution can adjust its activities to additional obligation and expectation depends on many factors. First of all, the Supreme Audit Institution, when accepting the initiative, must be absolutely convinced that there is appropriate legal basis and that it can provide adequate capacities for its activities within the predicate deadlines. The importance of cooperation between the Supreme Audit Institution and Parliament is reflected above all in the fact that they together make a balanced government accountability system. Through its professional work, the Supreme Audit Institution represents an important partner to the Parliament, and its contribution is irreplaceable. Parliament and government have an interest in obtaining feedback on the implementation of their decisions and activities. The government has instruments to review the results of its activities, but it does not always receive timely information on possible shortcomings and irregularities. With regards to this, the mechanism for following up the implementation of the recommendation is crucial for both Parliament and executive power. This requires that the Supreme Audit Institution recommendation should be clear and measurable. In other words, there must be a comprehensive and clear concept in following up their implementation through the full cooperation of Parliament, executive power and Supreme Audit Institution. Such a relation contributes to timely informing the citizen of whether the funds which have been allocated for public spending are used efficiently and in accordance with the law. Findings on compliance and effectiveness of public fund spending, as well as the findings about the activities performed by the audited entities with the aim of overcoming and correcting irregularities, would greatly contribute to additional involvement and support from the citizens in decision-making process of the executive power. Cooperation between the Parliament, the Supreme Audit Institution and government above all should be of preventive and advisory nature, and it should create a space for introducing systemic recommendation in different areas with the aim of eliminating irregularities and improving the situation where necessary. By strengthening the advisory role, the Supreme Audit Institution would further strengthen its position in the overall public sector system, and the public institution would get a better partner in making their economic decision. As for the relationship between Supreme Audit Institution and the Parliament, it is also important that the decision in the Parliament and its committees should be focused on the problems identified by the auditors and recommendations given in the audit reports, which would help the Parliament to play its role in holding the government and other institutions accountable. Therefore, it is necessary to prevent that the discussion in the Parliament on the audit reports turns into discussion and conflict between political parties, regardless of the context of the reports. When it comes to cooperation between the State Audit Institution of Montenegro and the Parliament of Montenegro, the State Audit Institution fulfills its legal obligation in accordance with its audit jurisdiction, and it provides timely audit reports to the Parliament and the public. According to the law on a budget and fiscal responsibility, as well as law on State Audit Institution, the Supreme Audit Institution is obliged to submit to the Parliament and the government the audit report of the draft law on their final budget account of Montenegro, as well as the annual activity report. After the discussion on the annual report of the State Audit Institution, the Parliament adopts the recommendation of the Supreme Audit Institution arising from the audit report of the draft law on the final account of the budget of Montenegro in a form of its own conclusion, which are published into official Gazette of Montenegro, those obliging the government to report on their implementation. Based on the conclusion of the Parliament, the government is obliged to draft an action plan for the implementation of the recommendation of the State Audit Institution, containing measures, responsible institution and deadlines. The Ministry of Finance is obliged to report quarterly to the government on the implementation of the action plan, and it submits to the State Audit Institution information on implementation of the recommendations given in the audit report for the previous year. State auditors, in accordance with the given task, monitor the activities undertaken by the audited entity on the implementation of the given recommendations and verify whether the audit entity has timely implemented the recommendation, as well as accuracy of data given in the information on the implementation of the action plan for the implementation of the recommendation of the Supreme Audit Institution. The institution seeks to improve the internal control mechanisms by giving the audit recommendations, provide better control over the public funds as well as more efficient use of public funds with the aim of strengthening accountability and good governance. By auditing the financial statements and procedures related to the fiscal discipline, the State Audit Institution acts systematically, primarily ensuring compliance with the law on budget and fiscal responsibility. The results which we achieve have significant effects because the identified irregularities in one fiscal year are eliminated in the coming years. And in this way, the function of the overall public finance system is improved. So far, the audit reports of the Supreme Audit Institution, as well as the recommendation in most cases have had support by the parliamentary majority and the opposition, which indicates that state audit institution has built impartiality and objectivity in its work, in accordance with the international auditing standards. Public communication policy is an important factor for the success of the government auditing. The practice has shown that the transparency of the work of the government auditing through the publication of all audit reports on the official website strengthens public trust, and as such as the audit reports are a useful tool for eliminating irregularities within the public sector. Despite the good cooperation between the Supreme Audit Institution of Montenegro and the Parliament, it is natural that there is a room for further improvement and development of cooperation. With this regard, the Supreme Audit Institution of Montenegro has recently signed a protocol on cooperation with the Parliament of Montenegro, which defines guidelines for the improving communication with the Parliament. One of the challenges our institution is facing in a timely review of individual audit reports by the Parliament and relevant parliamentary committees. Therefore, the Supreme Audit Institution proposed the possibility of setting up a special subcommittee for the budget and audit, which would be responsible for reviewing and monitoring the implementation of recommendations from the Supreme Audit Institution individual audit reports. In this way, the Supreme Audit Institution would strengthen the role and impact of its work by providing systematic solutions, in particular in the area of public finance. Ladies and gentlemen, the practice of the EU member states show the great importance of citizen participation in the decision-making process, especially related to issue of the public funds management and spending. Effective public sectors represent the continuity of activities of all key actors in all decision-making phases, from setting up priorities, drafting documents, implementing the decisions. In this process, we play a central role, the Supreme Audit Institution. However, the Supreme Audit Institution are not outside the overall public sector system, and therefore the success of our work greatly depends on our approach, as well as the quality of communication and information exchange with the government and the Parliament. In such a manner, we can only create added values for the benefit of our citizens. Thank you for your attention.